Welcome to World Talk with Friends, where the small world we live on becomes smaller as we discover neighborhoods all over the world by simply talking to our neighbors. This is Haggy Shack Radio production, simulcast over Wolf Spirit Radio Network. Colleen Kelly is producing with friends Nancy, Nora, Renata, Neil, and those we have yet to meet. Welcome to our world. Welcome to our world. Hi, this is Nancy Hopkins. This is World Talk with Friends, and it is, July 6th, 2016. Producing is Colleen Kelly from Haggy Shack Radio, haggyshack.com, and you're hearing this probably over Wolf Spirit Radio, which is simulcast over Haggy Shack. We have Nora Willow, who is my co-host, our co-host. And again, from last week, we've got Bill and Jan Moore with us. Last week, it was a very informative, it was a very informative show because we discussed the European Union and Britain's decision to exit the Union and what it meant. And we got into a lot of other things. What I would like to do is just throw it open to Bill and Jan and Nora. As to what, because Nora's in Italy right now. Bill and Jan are here in the United States, but Jan grew up in Great Britain, and Bill spent a decade or more, I guess, there. So I'm going to throw it open to them and ask them if they want to update any of the information that might have come to pass in the last week. Bill, Jan?
Go ahead, hon.
I think it's interesting how it's continuing, because what seems to be happening is that there is a continuing vacuum in terms of what happens next. And the posts that I've been reading indicate that there's no real plan now that decision or that referendum result has been made. The latest thing I've seen is, of course, now we've got Tony Blair being exposed in the recent report. I've forgotten the name of the guy who wrote it, but basically that, he misinformed the UK public in terms of the Iraq war, which is no surprise at all. And, there are petitions to strip him of honours and remove him from the Privy Council, who advises the Queen and so on. And also one of the latest things I read was an attack on Jeremy Corbyn, who I'm not very familiar with, but strikes me as a bit of a Bernie Sanders equivalent in the UK. So I think what we're seeing here is just more and more chaos in the whole political system, not to mention, the economic issues as well. And of course, since last week, I think I saw Iceland inviting the UK into that Northern Europe alliance, which is a possibility. And I think there's just a continuing manipulation of the news by the mainstream media, because the pound has dropped, and I've experienced that myself in moving money over from the UK. But, at another time when it wasn't a political issue, the drop in the pound would be seen as a great incentive for foreign organisations, companies to do business with Britain, because obviously, they can buy much more when the pound is low. But of course, that doesn't fit the agenda. So everything is being presented to support whatever agenda the mainstream media is supporting. But again, that's no news.
Well, do you have, because over here we've got a situation where we can see the breakup or the problems between the two factions of the higher ups, the 1%ers, because the Washington Post is saying one thing where the New York Times is saying something else. Are you getting still a consensus within the media as to what they're saying, that they're still on the same agenda, or does it look like it's falling apart over there? One paper saying one thing and one paper saying another.
I couldn't really say, Nancy, because I've seen certain things come through from different papers. I haven't consistently seen the different messages in the paper to be able to really comment on that.
And you haven't heard of anybody commenting on it, because that's how I found about it. I don't read these papers, but I found somebody that was, does, and was showing the comparisons. Very interesting.
Yeah, one thing, Nancy, if I may step in here, and Nora, being in Italy probably has a good perspective on this as well that we should ask about, because one thing I've found is, it's no secret to those who are pretty awake that there's only 6 corporations owning over 1,500 media outlets, which means most of the papers and most of the television. The question is if they are contradicting each other, is it corporate to corporate and the fact that the system is coming apart, or is it part of the media collaborating and trying to create further confusion? Because, it is a propaganda machine. And of course, when people start waking up and start seeing things and start realizing things, I'm just going strictly off the cuff here. It just seems logical to me that they would try to introduce an element of confusion to keep us further distracted, which has been the name of the game for so long. It's like they said that we were talking about last week, the Britain exit, while we were all distracted with all of the mainstream news of that, the Senate's going behind our back and supporting Monsanto's GMO, let's poison the population for a couple more years. I just wonder sometimes if that's not what is up. However, even with the confusion and the distraction, and UN Agenda 21 being our topic of discussion today, I think, the breaking news, I have not personally seen any of this, but Jan was telling me about it. The breaking news developing this week of Bill Clinton violating the law and meeting with Loretta Lynch, who also was violating the law, brings the treasonous families that have been involved in all this stuff, the Bushes and the 9/11 thing and the Clintons and God knows how much.
Okay, Phil, probably most people wouldn't even know about this, or maybe they would, but apparently what I heard was that Bill Clinton had basically gotten on a plane and Lynch is the Attorney General of the United States, where Lynch was, and spent 20 minutes with her and then exited the plane. Well, of course, the belief is that he was trying to intercede for Hillary because she's under indictment. Well, she's not under indictment yet, but they're looking very hard at her, and Lynch apparently had said that if the FBI said that she should indict, she would indict. After the meeting, she again reiterated that, if the FBI has enough information to indict her, then she will do that. But the problem is that the FBI does have enough information to indict her, and has said the people that are involved in it have said if it wasn't anybody else, she already would have been indicted. So. Yeah. That's the background. I just wanted to, give that.
But an update on that is that the FBI director has now said they're not going to indict her.
Yeah, the breaking news is apparently that the FBI has said they are not going to indict her, and that just came out this morning. If that is accurate, which it could be, because the FBI is under the Department of Justice. So Bill Clinton goes and uses his influence on Loretta Lynch, who is very weak as a Attorney General, and then she in turn uses her influence on the FBI. And if that story is accurate, that they are not going to indict her, then I think we're looking at a whole different kettle of fish. And even if it is confusion that's trying to be brought up over the Britain exit, if this information is true, they're going to try to confuse and distract us all the way to the ballot boxes and put her in office, because The corporation, which slips my mind now, that created the voting machines, the electronic voting machines, already have people coming forward and saying they're programmed to rig the election. So if that is the agenda, and if Clinton was successful, and if Loretta Lynch bowed to his wishes and pressured the FBI, and they in turn let Hillary off, and she in turn gets elected by a crooked election, a rigged election, we have a whole different situation. And all of this confusion and distraction, people need to really be looking at very, very carefully now and confirming this. And that's why I footnoted, I have not personally investigated this or read it. It was just brought to my attention that that had been announced. And if that is the case, and we are going into a fall election that's rigged, I think people need to really wake up fast, and we've got to get this disclosure moving fast, because I don't know about you, Nancy, you've got a lot of experience, down through the Pentagon direction and whatnot. It's a bit troubling to me that we have a president committing treason, a United Nations totally geared for making money in warfare, not for what it says it's to be. And all of these things going on with the confusion and distraction. And now, if this is coming to pass, it's really the time to wake up everybody we possibly can, as fast as we can, as gently as we can, so we don't, throw them off and against the awareness. But I truly believe, and I would like to hear your opinion on it, if Hillary gets elected, I think before the January inauguration, we're going to have a full-scale civil war between the patriot, republic-loving people and those that are the criminal cabal. Because I just don't think that this country, I think they're awake enough now, I don't think they're going to allow that to happen. But it would be better to wake it up, change it now, before it gets to the point of being something that's an actual, effectively a warfare showdown. And I'd like your opinion on that, Nancy, because you've been in some channels that kind of the background of what the military's thinking as well.
Well, I'd rather think in terms of what the anonymous group might be thinking. Okay, see, we see the black side. We see, and it's taken decades for most of us to even get a glimpse of it, and then for the facade to start falling apart so that we can actually see what's happening. But we hear from Ben Fulford, about certain things, and we hear from David Wilcock and all the other names certain things. I'm firmly convinced that the actual powers of let's say the true patriots, okay, is still a very secret organization, a secret thing. Nobody's paying any attention to them, but they didn't just go away. All right? Mm-hmm. So when Romney. Okay, Romney was it was the election, and Romney was losing the election, and Ohio was again the linchpin. If he got Ohio, well, he might get the election, but if he didn't get Ohio, no way. And at the time, it looked very much, the accounts were coming in, it looked very much like Ohio was going to go for Obama. So the thing of it was that when I was listening to Romney's response to what the polls were telling him, I knew this guy he didn't care. That he was so sure Ohio was going to go for him that he just didn't care what the polls are saying right then and there. And then Ohio, did not go for him. And it didn't take very long, and I only saw it in it wasn't one of those things where every conspiracy website was repeating the same thing. It was an obscure posting that I saw that I went, oh my God, and I don't think I paid enough attention to, because I thought it would just go wild, so I didn't pay enough attention to really capture that website. Maybe I did, maybe it's in my reference material, but it certainly stuck in my head. And what had happened is, yes, there was a sub-program that was going to essentially take over and give Ohio to Romney, no matter what had happened in the election. But the anonymous group knew that this was happening, and they put a program in that did not allow that sub-program to kick in. All right? And that's the only reason that Romney is not president of the United States. Knowing that, and knowing the way that that I would operate if I was a secret organization trying to make major changes from the inside, nobody would hear about me. That's why the anonymous groups, which you used to see all over the place, you don't see any of it. They haven't gone away. They've just gone farther underground. All right.
So what's your opinion about Fulford and David Wilcock then, in terms of, they have been in the public eye. So does that undermine the credibility of them, do you think? Think, Nancy?
No, actually I think it's the other way around, is that the people that are out there in public, Fulford for being the primary one right now, he can say whatever he wants.'s not associated with the anonymous groups. In other words, whatever they're saying is probably true. He's probably got the truth. I mean, he can cite resources, and it's not just, an insider told me. It's that to a point, but then he also backs it up. And he's been on the same, kind of discussion. And this week it was, I don't know if you saw the report, but it was about the British exit and what's happening in the EU. And he's sort of presenting it as if there's not some massive conspiracy behind it, the best I can see, because like JP was on with me last night with me and Colleen, and he was talking in terms of that he thought that there was a high potential that they wanted the vote to go that way, that it was a manipulated vote to have the British exit, because that would throw in all sorts of confusion, all sorts of problems, and just like you're saying, keep us totally distracted over there. He's looking at it as a much bigger, a scheme of operations, of planning, and of, control than I think that you or I did yet last week, saying, yes, there is a lot of attempt to persuade one from the other, but JP believes that the way the vote went was that he made a definitive difference between the middle class and the working class. And Colleen and I said, we don't really, the working class is the middle class in the United States. I mean, that's the way I would understand it. And he said that in the United Kingdom, your worker class is the workers. Your middle class, by definition, is the thinkers, the teachers, the bankers, those kind of people, not the hands-on people.
And the managers.
Yeah, the white collar and the blue collar sort of.
Yeah, that probably would have been better. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where I was going with that, Nancy. I appreciate you commenting on that, because I think one of the things that I was leading up to on that is I think that we have some very important issues with today's show on the UN Agenda 21. But I was just going to comment that because of, and leading sort of into that in a way, if in fact this information is correct, what I was going to say about Hillary's situation is if the FBI is going to let her off the hook, and that would to me underscore the fact that our entire system top down is totally corrupt. And if that's the case, then from what I also hear is the petitions have started flying on the internet to go after Loretta Lynch and Hillary and all that other stuff, which had been going on, but that, that's accelerating. And I was just going to say that if we in fact have been demonstrated, assuming we have, that our whole system has completely gone corrupt, then, prior to, a patriot type stand of lock and load because we're going to war type thing, it's like now is the real window of opportunity to prevent that pain and suffering and go the light side and say, listen, let's push. And everybody who's sitting and looking at this stuff and saying, well, this just isn't right, or here's a petition, and they need to actually sign the petitions. Stop being afraid of having their name on something. They need to share it on Facebook or their email or however. And we need to, I'm not a big follower. I only occasionally look at Alex Jones stuff, but one time I was watching something he was doing and he said the way to win this victory is through exposure and sharing information. It's not through bloodshed. And I tend to agree with that. I think that this is our real wake-up call, and this UN Agenda 21 as we get into that, because Hillary is totally for that. And I think that when people wake up to the fact that we are looking at people in the government and in the United Nations whose total agenda is depopulation, which really is no other way to describe it but worldwide genocide. And if we look back over the history of what they've been doing, that's been going on a smaller scale. They're just accelerating it faster and faster to where they can, do more and more damage. So I think the time of awakening and exposure, like I said last week, I don't think we need to beat anybody up to get our opinion over to them. But what we need to do is we need to start thinking, those who are awake need to start thinking, how do I share this information? How do I soft sell it? How do I adjust it to wherever the person's level of awakening is? We're in an RV site right next to a couple of people that I can tell you are, she's a military commander down in Albuquerque, and they are totally, probably, in my estimation, I don't mean this judgmentally, but they probably totally lockstep follow anything the government said. And they don't understand any of this, but that, is where I've been not just spoon feeding them, but eyedropper feeding them little bits of information just to get the curiosity started. But it is a time of awakening, it's a time of sharing, I think really, but we need to really do it with a soft sell and a matched approach to whoever we're sharing it with.
I just, I don't think it can come together that fast. I think the awakening can happen just like boom. You're going to get a certain amount of collective consciousness information, and it's just going to feed down to everybody, and they're going to wake up automatically. The problem is that Hillary is too big to indict. That's the bottom line. The banks weren't too big to fail. It was the bankers were too big to indict. That's the problem, is that in our mindset, we have gotten to the point where they can tell us that somebody is a friggin' crook and probably implicated in really disastrous policy and immoral acts, but they're too big to indict. When you have that moral statement about a society, you're in trouble. And that's the problem, is that we understand, the FBI, for crying out loud, the people working in the FBI said if it wasn't anybody else, she would be indicted. And now the FBI is taking the official response that they're not going to indict her at all. That's absolutely, mind-bending to me. I at least hope that maybe this time. So there's not even a semblance of being able to work within the existing reality. That's just a fact. You try to do all this, protesting and all this things. I absolutely believe it should be done because it's an awakening process. All right? And as these people sign these things and as these petitions go up and they go nowhere, because they will go nowhere, all right, then the people that signed the petitions are going to say, why didn't that go anywhere? Well, because the system's broken from your standpoint. From their standpoint, it works perfectly.
Yes, I think the petitions themselves are raising visibility as well. I mean, this is where social media is so great. I mean, I know you get the shills on there and what have you, but There are petitions up there already to remove the FBI director and I think the Attorney General as well. So, the more that's spread around the internet, I mean, that's going to be our saving grace, isn't it? The fact that we have got the internet, which can actually, expose the disinformation and the corruption that's going on.
Yeah, that's a good question because, what Jan just brought up, if everybody stops and thinks about it, we're at about, in my humble opinion, we're somewhere around 1938 or 39 in the rise of Hitler, in the same type of situation here. The difference is when the rise of Hitler was going on, yes, there were probably a lot of people that thought that they couldn't do anything, but there was also a much more limited flow of information than there is now. And that's where our real shining light is. That to me is the light at the end of the tunnel, is how fast we can expose things. And that does seem to be accelerating. Everything that happens, it seems like the disclosure or the exposure is coming faster and faster and faster. I think I mentioned that last week. The time it took to figure out what happened with Kennedy, was quite long, and even 9/11 was quite long before it became common knowledge that there was a real different story of reality there. But, every day things are moving faster and faster, and these petitions going up immediately are a good sign. But again, my encouragement would be to everybody, don't just sit on the sidelines and watch. Get up on the top of the tree and holler and tell everybody what you know. And just like this that I said this morning, this all might be false information that's being put out this morning that she's not going to be indicted, perhaps to incite, trouble. But the point is if people are saying, what's all this about, and actually looking and then taking some action to further expose it, further get to the truth, then I personally just think the exposure and the truth is something that there's no way possible the cabal can ever beat. It just takes them apart.
If you guys will get the link to that petition thing, we can, make our listeners aware of the fact where it is.
Yeah, it's actually on my Facebook page, so I'll post it on Cosmic Reality, Nancy, when we finish the show.
Okay. Yeah, we'll put it, well, I don't know where I put it. Yeah, because it's so critical that people become, the petition thing, like I say, I think that it's so corrupt that it's not going to really work. But the fact that the petitions are out there, that people are talking about it, they believe it should work, but it's not going to work. So that is going to accelerate again, Bill. You know what I'm saying? It's like you have to demonstrate that what you think is the way that democracy works is not working. If you don't even get involved in it, you're not going to even see the demonstration. But I guarantee you that when you go and you try to do something and it blows up in your face like, what the hell is this about? Let's go back to the 2009 and the banking thing. There were all these supposed fines against the banks, but the people that were doing it, they got benefits from everything. They got more money. They got more bonuses. It's like it was ludicrous. And that fact did not get missed by the people in the United States. Because my sister and brother-in-law, who I could never talk about this kind of thing to, all of a sudden we're talking about this. These well, they were the ones that, and they never went to jail, and, they're angry about it. So every time the cabal does something that is trying to be a control mechanism, it virtually starts to, come up in front of them, blows up in front of them, because every time they do something now, they're being seen, and people are screaming. So, Nora, you've not been in here because we've been kind of like, got off.
No problem. I'm enjoying this. I do have actually a little thought regarding everything you said at the last 5 minutes. What I personally think, and I'm sure you all agree on this, that the cabal, or whatever you want to call them, they are relying on people's memories, and because a lot can be said, but people tend to forget. They hear something and then they say, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but then they don't. And it seems like most people, the masses, don't question. So, obviously those who are more, they use their critical thinking, say, wait a second, hold on. This person said that, then why hasn't it been implemented? So then the research starts. People like that are a problem for the establishment, obviously. And the internet is a great way to, as you very well said, Bill, put it out there, tell people about it, and whoever feels inclined to believe it or to find it logical will make their own research. But I do believe that they rely on people's memories, because people don't focus. They forget and then they just let it go.
Well, plus they don't want to remember something that is bothersome.
Exactly.
So they start to put out. One of the things that it sort of goes to what I'm saying is that when they come out and they do something like this and it instills fear, and all of a sudden people are taken out of their normal lives and they have to confront something that they didn't really want to think about. You've woke them up. It's the one step to waking up. Every time they put somebody in a state of fear, it used to be you put them in a state of fear and they talk amongst themselves and they get more afraid. But now you've got internet sites like this one and all over, and information that says, well, the reason that this is happening is because of this. You know what I'm saying? Is that it's working reverse for them. Every time they attempt to instill more fear, it blows up in their faces and people wake up and they go, okay, I'm afraid. And then there's somebody says, over here, we got the group over here that can tell you what's really happening. Oh, really? And so they go over there. So everything that they seem to be doing is only accelerating the awakening.
Exactly. They're making it more and more obvious that there's something that's not right.
Yeah, it's harder and harder to forget because it's in your face every day. And we've got to keep it in their face.
And I think this is why, one of our missions is empowerment, because, there has been a tendency for people to think that they have no power, that they are powerless, and that, nothing they do could possibly make a difference. And that's just not true, because it takes each individual to actually, post something or share something or tell somebody that they know or, spread this. And, that one, without the individuals, you don't get the mass. And so people really need to recognize how powerful they really are. And, I always say that the greatest power is at the quantum level. So never underestimate the power of one.
That's right. And what Jan's talking about on the empowerment, in reality, if you look at it in rough figures, we have a global corrupt elite that are roughly 1% of the planetary population. In most, if you want to just call it a barroom brawl or anything else, an argument, a debate, an actual fight or anything else, if you have two people against one, it gets harder and harder for the one. You have 3 against 1, it gets even harder. 4 against 1, even harder. And we are 99%. So that means there's 99 people potentially who can encircle the one. And it's not about a fight. It's not about beating them up. It's not proving we're right. It's about the fact you put 99 people around one, and that one cannot be heard. That one cannot be effective. That one cannot do things. And it is really, really important that the 99% start coming together as the 99 against the one and getting that voice out there, because whether people want to do it or not, want to admit it or not, one of the things is, and I don't say this out of fear, but they need to look at history and they need to look at the fact that these people's agenda, starting with the global thing we talked about last week of the Georgia Stones, it clearly states they want to depopulate the planet. UN Agenda 21 is about depopulating the planet. And if that's what it's all about, They need to understand that the 99 did not come together and encircle the one in 1939, 40, what have you, onwards, when they were loading people in boxcars and shipping them off to death camps in Germany. And I don't say this out of fear. I say this out of reality. One of my customers back when I owned a capital equipment company was Halliburton Corporation. And if anybody doesn't believe it, they need to do some homework. Halliburton has been building hundreds of rail cars with shackles in them. Now that is Nazi Germany all over again. And people need to wake up to this, because now if we get the 99 around the one, keep getting this information out, keep getting the petitions out, keep getting the disclosure out, and literally drown the message of that 1%, those rail cars will end up just going to scrap, and these FEMA camps they've been building will end up just becoming something else, some corporate industrial complex or something. But our opportunity is right now. This is the year that's going to be, and people have to realize we must drown out that 1%. Be it through petitions, through internet, Facebook sharing, or anything else. And as I said, when we're talking face to face with somebody or dealing with somebody even on the internet that's going, oh, you're delusional or what have you, is not let our ego get in there, but say, okay, I understand where you're coming from. You might want to read a couple of things if you have time, and just be gentle with them and move on to anything that is being receptive, because you know, we may not get 99 surrounding one, but if we get 50 surrounding one, there's still going to be silence. That's one way that I think of it.
Totally. And what about the what do you call them? Those like casket type things that they've built. Could you give some more could you give us some information, Bill, about that? They're like these big plastic thingies where they say they're going to, they would put bodies in. What was that?
I'm sorry, Nora, I didn't quite hear that. Did you?
The caskets.
Oh,
the big,
yes.
The really big ones.
Camps, there's lots of film footage on the.
I've seen.
On the, there's a lot of film footage on the internet showing these FEMA camps with the plastic coffin type things that are supposedly designed to hold 4 bodies in each one. And there's 400,000 of them been built, and that's all been confirmed. And so you can figure out that 400,000 times 4 is a lot of people. The other side of it is the fact that, this is all moving exactly. And this is why, I think people need to wake up, because it's not like, oh my God, something new's happening. An alien spaceship just landed and aliens got out, and all of a sudden we're face to face with them and we're like in an unknown territory. Every single detail of what's happening with the FEMA camps, these coffins, the rail cars with shackles and everything else is exactly what they did in Nazi Germany. So it's not like we're dealing with some alien force landing and going, oh my God, we're seeing something we've never seen before.
Something new.
That's why people have to wake up and share that. The other thing, Nora, is in answer to your question, there is some question as to why those are there. But one of the things, for you being over in Europe, that I think, for all of our friends over in Europe,
yes, and
other parts of the world, is and even in America, if they have not awakened to it, the Center for Disease Control in the United States is a biowarfare machine. It's not what it is titled, Center for Disease Control. It is actually for creation and containment, so that they can use that just like a weapon. I mean, you wouldn't go in and drop a nuclear bomb on somewhere without at least taking as much precautions as you can for your own side's troops or what have you. So there's a lot of things going on in the background, but there again, the same thing is the dark forces of evil. Some of the biblical scholars can say, oh yeah, well, it's going to get down to the last big battle, and that's what this is all about, and there's going to be millions of people die and whatever else, and nobody knows that. Nobody knows for sure what's going to happen, but there is one thing that's obvious. No matter what they do, no matter how they come out, you just cannot, I just do not believe any way, shape, or form that there's going to be any need for outright brute force on anything, because like I said, you put 99 people around one. If I may give an example, I've done a lot of volunteer police work, and in the situation of one time that we were in a gang fight situation as a first response car, and I was riding as a volunteer, we had a group of about 78 people surround us, and it took 3 of the backup cars to break that up, and me also driving, actually sliding over as a volunteer and driving the police car through the crowd to break it apart so that it wouldn't be surrounding us, because those 78 guys were keeping the other police officers, even when there was 3 or 4 of them, from getting to us in the middle of it. And of course, you know, I mean, we had things like shotguns and everything else, but the point is you don't want to just jump out of the police car and start shooting everybody. The idea is peaceful resolution. So, that was, in effect, that's our opportunity here is you don't, you know, slide over in the driver's seat and cruise around and break up that 1% by surrounding them and just making an effective stand of information disclosure.
Well, I think your point can be, shown by what's happened in France, where the police force is absolutely exhausted. They've got so many little riots that they can't deal with anything anymore. And the response of the French government was to try to enact more fascist regulations. And the police said, who's going to enforce it? We can't. You know, that's happening right now in France, and they do not have guns. We're the ones that have the guns.
Yeah, the French have always been brilliant protesters, I have to say. They protest about absolutely everything, you know, the agricultural policy, and all the sheep farmers turn out. So it's really good to see that, and interesting mainstream media have suppressed that as well. Yeah,
and history shows it, you know, the French, Americans sometimes make fun of the French because I've heard the jokes like the only thing they're good at is surrendering. But we do have to remember, and I do this to make all of you smile, that they did invade England in 1066 and successfully invaded it. And the rumor is because they thought the English food was so bad they had to bring over sauces and garnishments.
But actually the power of the French was in the resistance. I mean, they did a huge amount underground that they couldn't necessarily do overtly in actually fighting the Germans. But, you know, the work that they did was really influential. So, you know,
a case can be made that D-Day would never have succeeded had not the resistance been so effective.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd just like to kind of not change the subject, but shift the conversation a little bit in terms of, you know, what I feel that we're involved in at the moment is a psychological war. Because I'm sure, you know, this is one of your fortes, Nancy, from your background. You know, the thing about people who resist the awakening process is this cognitive dissonance thing of, you know, what is actually happening is so far removed from the reality that they've been conditioned to believe in, that they just resist and dismiss what's coming out in public. And of course, we know that the powers that be are so good at psychological manipulation. And what occurred to me is that what we've got here is the presentation of a stereotypical candidate for the presidency. And I was thinking about Obama. You know, there was this great support for Obama at the time, and I was in the UK, so I was seeing it from a distance. But, you know, it was the idea that, well, we're really making progress to have a black president, and this was like a milestone. And, of course, you know, I have to say that there's been a great disappointment in the reality compared with the way that was presented. And I see the same thing with Hillary because, you know, I have contacts who are in that supposedly conscious community who are supporting Hillary. And I'm absolutely flabbergasted because, you know, she's being presented as, you know, let's have the first woman president. So we'll support her no matter what. And they're not saying we'll support her no matter what, but that's the reality. Oh, it'd be great to have a woman president. But what they fail to recognise is it's not about the gender. It's about the mentality of the person, whether they're male, female or transgender or whatever. You know, Thatcher was put in power because it's the first woman prime minister, but actually she was a disaster. So, you know, Hillary has a track record of not supporting women at all. Hillary is out for Hillary, and Hillary is going to do whatever the people above, the secret government, want her to do. And that's as simple as that. But, you know, there are still people out there that will support her just because she's got boobs and the other bits that a woman has.
Yeah, and that, I don't think, you know, a lot of people look at it and they don't look beyond that because, you know, if they were looking beyond that and said, what effect is it actually going to have on my life if there's a psychopath controlling my life? And I mean, they need to go back and watch The Silence of the Lambs or something and think about Alex, what's his name, Anthony Hopkins' role in that, because the thing is that's what Jan said about the black president. And I don't know how Nora sees it from Europe, but Nancy, I'm sure you and Colleen probably can recall when Obama was running for president. I think, as a matter of my humble opinion, that people, because they picked a black man who was totally unknown, and threw him up there and escalated and elevated him, I think the people were looking at him with the rose-colored glasses of Martin Luther King on, you know, and seeing, oh, well, you know, he's going to be a black president. Well, you know, I remember Martin Luther King, you know, he did all this stuff for civil rights, so he'd be a, you know, a good guy, without looking at the fact that of what he really represented, you know, going back. And so we're up against, you know, quite a challenge.
I want to say this about Obama, that Obama had given a speech at the Democratic convention, and he wasn't running or anything. It was a convention, you know, the 4 years before. And he brought me to tears. The man was absolutely eloquent and absolutely brilliant. Okay? I didn't
True politician.
I didn't even realize he was a black man. Honest to God. Somebody said to me, you know, 4 years later, you know, something about the black guy running. I went, what guy? And they said, Obama. I said, he's black? For some reason, it never even registered in my head that he was black. But his message was one that really resonated with me. So he did have a track record in a certain way, in that most everybody that immediately when he started getting, you know, some talk about him running, wanted to see him run. I did, because of the fact that I had heard his message, that one message. Now, when I became pretty much anti-Obama was during a debate when he was asked how he would manage. And he said he would get, you know, really good people around him and listen to what they had to say. That was a George Bush kind of White House. So you're depending on other people to tell you what to think. And right away I went, all the bells and whistles started going off. I was never an Obama supporter wholeheartedly, until there was the wave that started to work with him. And I'm thinking, well, you know, maybe the guy, you know, maybe it is a good thing. And it was their continual working on the concept of hope. Hope, 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 hope. Yes, we hoped. We hoped. And that's what you get when you get somebody like Hillary. She's a woman. A woman wouldn't do the things that men do. A woman is going to be compassionate. It's hope again. They feed us these concepts of hope. Now, Trump is doing the same thing, but he's giving hope to a different type of people. You know, the people that want to see things controlled more. You know, so his message is probably not even the message that God only knows if Trump knows what his message is. You know, but they manipulate even the messages that the candidates have. So, you know, Obama, yeah, he's a tragedy. He'll probably go down as the worst president we ever had. And it's a tragedy because this was a guy that before he was even, you know, halfway comfortable in the White House was given the Nobel Peace Prize and then proceeded to put us into war after war after war. You know, what was that all about?
That's absurd.
Yeah, not to mention the internal war. I mean, he has done more for racism than probably anybody in history. But that is, you know what hope stands for. I didn't realize. I thought hope meant, you know, looking for a brighter future. It's actually just a little acronym for here's our plan, everybody. And the part that follows after that in parentheses is you don't have any choice. So.
But I did, you know, and I don't, again, there's a lot of good information out there. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And, you know, Colleen's just put a message up, which I agree with. You know, how much of this is nothing to do with Obama, but the people that are controlling the whole system that hold a gun to their head and say, you know, you have to do it this way. And I read someone, I can't remember where it was, it's some time ago, that basically said that Obama had been threatened that if he didn't go along with whatever he was told to do, his family would be taken out. So, you know, Jan,
in relationship to that, when he was elected president the second time and he was at the inaugural parade and they were sitting on these bleachers, now he turned and was talking to somebody next to him. It's a video thing. It was a short video thing. And he turns to him and you can clearly read his lips, but you also can semi-hear the audible. I mean, enough that you know what you heard. And he said, oh, well, unless they shoot me.
Mm.
You know, and I noticed when I was watching him that I was sort of like pondering it. I said, gee, the guy seems to be completely, you know, laid back. No, you know, he was just almost like he was on a tranquilizer or something. And when I heard that statement, because I was like, oh my God, did I just hear that? And then it came up on YouTube that he had actually said it. I thought, okay, so this is a 4 years completely lost because he can't play the game. He knows that he's dead if he tries.
Mm.
And that was a real in your face kind of moment. You know, that no, the guy's he can't do it. I mean, what would you do? You know, what would you do if they threatened everybody around you? And you know, I mean, there's no one human being that can do this. There's no leader. We got to get away from the concept that there's any leader out there that's going to do it. It's just like you say, Bill. It's only those guys are the 1%ers. We're the guys that have all the power because we got all the numbers. And we just have to stand up and realize that. I continually, you know, try to tell people that your thoughts are more important than anything you can do. And it is your thoughts. If you begin to formulate a change in the collective, then you can have a massive change. Now, what we're dealing here is with the old reality, the reality of, you know, what can we do to influence it? Nora, what's happening with Italy? How are they perceiving it? I mean, are they just sort of sat back and looking at all this, or are they also engaged? Are they starting to get, you know, more engaged in the process, let's say?
Well, from what I see, from just my own observation, is it's quite a sad situation because people seem to be so busy with their problems. People are really struggling here, and even though they are seeing what's going on, I don't. From my observation, from the people around me, they have kind of this attitude of, well, we're not involved in this. So we have to focus on our problems. Again, there are people who are, who believe obviously in this whole thing and see it and, are trying their best. But as a majority, I don't see, the Italian people, very much awake. One of the main things that, I don't know if I mentioned it to you, maybe I didn't, Nancy. I wasn't really excited to come back to Italy, and I still am not. But I have my reasons why I'm here. But the main reason why I wasn't was because I knew that the society here is still in some way very much mind controlled. And I don't know, is it because of the influence of religion? Even though, you don't see many religious people anymore. The church doesn't have much power, obviously, as it used to. But something just feels off. It's like they listen. What's the word? I feel that they're desensitized. This is what I'm noticing. They're desensitized. I don't see much reaction. I really don't know where that's coming from.
Let me ask you something. Renata Jet was on with us, and she was discussing how she feels carries guilt because of Austria's participation in World War II. And I thought, this is really odd, because one of my best friends, Peter, is from Germany. And I'm thinking, okay, Austria, yeah, they got involved in it, but they sort of were the first victims of the Nazi expansion out of Germany. So, but I had never heard Peter, in all of the conversations we've had over 25 years, ever say anything concerning a feeling of guilt by himself or the German people. And I found that to be kind of odd. So when he was here, I told him what Renata had said, and I said, do you feel this? And he went into it ended up being a tirade. All right. It was very obvious that, yes, this guy feels a tremendous amount of guilt, even though he's claiming he does not. It's the people. Well, yes, they have this guilt, but I don't, because I could separate myself. And I'm going to myself, I don't think you separated yourself, dude, because the complete meltdown that I was seeing, and his wife was there. And I said to him, this must have gone on 15, 20 minutes. And finally I said to him, Peter, I will put you on live radio, but I can't take any more of this. Do the Italians, could it be a sense of guilt that's at the bottom of their seemingly not being able to adjust to reality? Because, of course, in Italy they had Mussolini and, that history. Do you detect any of that?
That's an interesting question.
Nora?
Yes, Bill.
Can I ask you a question here? Whether it be working from guilt, I think what you said hits the nail on the head, because I see that right here in America. People are so caught up as they slide down a cliff, effectively. Our middle class has been virtually destroyed by this last 4 years of the Obama presidency. And, people are just losing their grip so fast that they're concentrating on trying to hold on to the rope, as it were, and, missing the big point. And I think that's one of our big opportunities for all of us on the show today and all of us out there, is to say, listen, I know you've got to hang on to this rope, and let me do whatever I can to help you hang on to this rope. But let's get you aware of the fact of who threw you over the cliff, And Colleen brought up a good point on the chat window. We've got to go after the puppet masters, not the puppets. So if people become aware of Jacob Rothschild and the Rockefellers and the Morgans and the people who are actually the conference room full of people, which is about all it is, 10, 12, 15, 20 people that are controlling the world, expose them to the hilt and do that 99 and surround them thing, then what we can do is we can educate them to the fact that if we can get them out of there, you won't be hanging from a rope. You know, you'll actually be pulled up to safety by the other 98 of us out there. And I think that's part of the selling mechanism to getting people sold on the awakening idea. Again, it's just my humble opinion, but I do know when people are distracted, you know, when you're fighting a fire sometimes, you know, you're so busy throwing buckets of water, you don't realize you got a 5,000 gallon pumper truck sitting right outside if you just stop a second and run out and get the big hoses.
Exactly.
And I wonder if that may not be part of our opportunity here is to do that. The other thing is I'd just like to ask the listeners, if we could, to have a show of hands for the ones who listened last week and are here again this week. Raise your hand if you actually went out and investigated the Georgia Stones that we mentioned, or investigated UN 21 or any of these things, because there again, no matter what the intentions, I mean, people can listen to the show and get ideas and concepts, but it's really important that they take just a little bit of time to bring themselves up to speed, because anything anybody says, I mean, I'm not, but, you know, anybody could be putting out false information or what have you. I'm just expressing some opinions, but it is about educating and educating oneself first, but also helping and sharing other people understand that, you know, that's why you're dangling from a rope. It's not about Mussolini. It's not about Obama. It's not about Hillary. It's actually about those puppet masters that Colleen mentioned that are pulling all the strings, and they're the ones kicking people over the cliff. Because it isn't any secret the Rothschilds have been financing both sides of every war for God knows how long, and they make money either way it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do agree with you very much. However, this whole thing about the guilt, I think there is a reality to it, as Nancy said. And I haven't really dealt with the Italians in a long time, in the sense of, you know, day-to-day interaction. So it's quite new for me. And I'm still getting to know, because it's been a long time, you know, society changes. And seeing it also from a perspective of someone who's a bit older now with a bit more experience, you would notice things that you haven't noticed before. But I do have to say that maybe this feeling of being desensitized could be part of it out of guilt. You know, maybe not wanting to face what you're really feeling, so you just act as if nothing's happening, kind of a denial state. I'll give you a little example. It's something maybe irrelevant, but you tell me. Today I was in the metro, and there was this man that came in, and he was begging, and he was really, really old, and it broke my heart. And around me were all these, mostly there were men around me, all young, strong, you know, healthy, and no one even looked at him. He was really, really old, barely able to walk. No one even wanted to give him €1. And I felt so bad. And obviously I can't say no. And I just gave him something. And when he left, he thanked me and he left. Everyone was staring at me as if I was an alien. To the point it made me uncomfortable. This is just to give you a little example how people, I was shocked. I shouldn't be, but I was shocked. And this is just a simple thing. We're not talking about global scale, humanitarian, caring for other people. This is a huge indication that there is something wrong with society. People don't give a shit about each other. Excuse my French.
I think this is really about brainwashing though as well, Nora, because, you know, over here, some of the cities have actually made it illegal to feed the homeless.
Yes, I've
heard.
And
so there is this whole thing about, you know, homeless people are worthless, they're lazy, they need to pull their bootstraps up and get on with life and so on. And this is more of this brainwashing propaganda that people are being subjected to. And especially when people are struggling themselves, they tend to think, well, why should somebody get a handout if, you know, I'm struggling to make ends meet? And it gets into that very selfish, self-centered, self-interested mentality. that then sees these people as the enemy, and that another case of separation.
It's the dehumanization of humanity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
We're at the top of the hour. We're actually a little bit beyond. So let's take a quick break, and we will get to Agenda 21 when we get back. Nora, that broke my heart when you told me. It must have been very frightening for you.
It was
not so much from a fear of what you would get on a 3D, but a fear at a spiritual level that, oh my God, I'm sitting in with these people who are basically looking at me because I did a good thing as if I'm some kind of a criminal.
Exactly. It was really uncomfortable.
But don't forget, you balance the power.
True. And I would do it again.
You immediately balance the power from the haves and the have-nots, and all it takes is a little time for attract another one, staying focused on that help side. You actually balanced the power, and you started the quantum flow that way. You might not have seen it right then, but you started the quantum flow to bring the next person and the next person. So that critical thing, even if you're surrounded by people that don't get it, that critical thing, you made it one-on-one instead of one against everybody. So that's a really important thing you did, and that was very strong.
Well, actually, last night before going to bed, I did ask the universe and Gaia to send me whoever needs something from me. So that was kind of my answer. I did ask for that last night. So it's kind of funny.
Seriously, everybody who takes that chance with life does make the impact that Bill is talking about. That's what we're talking about, empowerment. Okay, we're going to take an empowering few minutes break here. Colleen, can you put on us a tune, please?
I certainly can.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Love Grows Where My Roseberry Goes by Edison Lighthouse.